Hello and welcome to this week's review of the My Hero Academia Vigilantes anime, and this week I'm reviewing the episode titled Take Off, and we kick off this review as we always do with these reviews by talking about the positives and the headline positives, all the things I'll be talking about in this video and then some. I think the animation in this episode is fantastic, it has a solid and consistent tone, and I think it sets up future plot points effectively. Easy for me to say. Now, some of you may be wondering why Crawler and Popstep didn't know who Eraser is towards the start of this episode. I'm just going to touch on this briefly. It's because this is very early into Eraserhead's career. This is a prequel series after all. I mean, I did a whole video dispelling a few myths and misinformation regarding this series, which watch at your leisure, but we'll talk about the core of this episode and talk about the things I enjoyed with this particular episode itself. I really did love the animation of this episode. It frequently looked so smooth and alive that it had this near cinema quality to it, or at least for me it sits within the same neighbourhood as the old Max Fleischer Superman shorts I really do love, and I highly recommend people to watch at their first available leisure. Oh sure, some aren't that good, but I do appreciate the animation that we get there, and this does feel like it's within that same neighbourhood. It's this near cinema quality animation in a way which feels like it isn't too showy, but when it does want to show, oh baby does it show. And this is particularly true when we get to our big opening fight. Knuckle Duster versus Eraserhead. An unstoppable force meets a sleepy object. Ooh! Now, I will admit that for some people, they may well be disappointed that that fight didn't go on longer. Maybe they wanted some more, I don't know, death battle-y, I suppose, but I will just say is that that fight went on for as long as it needed to. It really does. Whilst there is a part of you that kind of wants more, at the same time, the whole point of this fight is just to underline the fact that Knuckle Duster doesn't have a quirk. And whilst I'll discuss that in a little while shortly, I should say, I think the fight in and of itself is paced perfectly for what it needs to do, and for the most part it is, for the time being at least, just a walk-on cameo by a character from the main series. Yes, there is a part of me that is always a little bit cautious about these kind of things in other spin-off media. I do have to say that itself is still well put together, and it does help to tease the quality of the action sequences that we get thereafter. Now, I'm not going to go play for play and fight for fight through every fight and action sequence in this episode. There's other people that will be doing that, there'll be reaction channels doing that. I'm respectfully not going to do that now because, I'll be honest, there's only so many times you could say, I thought it was bloody good. And I will just say that I think that all the fights, for the most part, were well realised. And there are moments with each of them that I did truly appreciate. Like, I just love the moment where Knuckle Duster is smacking the two goons up the side of the head with the brick. I just love how his strength and how his tenacity and how the force of his punches is translated with this series. It's that brutalness that I mentioned in the previous review that really does make each fight and each impact and each blow and each punch that he gives off have this supreme weight behind it that I just really do love, and it's something that I hope that we do get to see consistent throughout this series. Not just with his fights, but also with the fights that anyone else may be having with all of this, but we'll soon see with that. I just love how these fights are put together, particularly in terms of how they're staged and shot and put together. I'm not going to do a big comparison between the different fight sequences and different aspects of it. I will make reference to it here and there. I will just say that I think that the fight with the giant version of the Salaryman was done better in the manga, or at least the grand climactic moment where Crawler is leaping up to save Popstep. In the manga, it is a double-page spread, and the artwork is beautiful. Here, whilst the animation itself is good and is great, I don't think it has anything within it which has that level of emotional impact to it. Granted, how the manga tackles all this is very different, so it feels almost like apples to oranges, and have more fundamental issues with this action scene, which we'll discuss later on, but I do enjoy how it and all the other action within this episode was presented and how it was all put together. The choreography and the presentation of it was crisp and well designed. There was an energy and flair to it, and like I say, each fight felt as though it had a genuine sense of strength and weight behind it, even though we are dealing with fighters and combatants with a fairly relatively low area of strength and skill and tenacity and what have you. it still feels as though it's grand, it still feels as though it's impactful. It's, as I mentioned with the Dragon Ball Daima reviews, why I prefer the fights in Dragon Ball, the original series, versus some of the stuff that we see in Super, because when people get hit in Dragon Ball, particularly when we get into the later tournament arcs, it really feels like people are getting knocked about, which is something that doesn't quite feel the same in Super. Here, the fight sequences feel more brutal when it's just Knuckle Duster punching people in an alleyway, versus some of the fights that we see Midori and Co in with the main series. But again, I don't want to get too lost in some kind of comparison with all of this. I will just say that I do love the colour palette and the vibrancy that we get with the animation and just the colour palette in general here. It has a crisp level of detail, and on a side note, I will just say that I really have come around on that intro. It really does help to evoke my feelings and underline them quite neatly. Yeah, sure, Vigilantes can be dark, but it can also be bloody goofy, and I think the animation in the intro sequence itself does help to reflect that fact. And this episode itself does give us that hint of just how bloody goofy it can be in some regards, but we'll talk about that in just a moment. Another quick thing I'll just quickly mention is I think the integration of CG in this episode was very well done. I know that might seem a little bit absurd, strange for me to say from certain people who have been watching this channel for quite a long time, but I really did like how it was put into this. At worst, it might look like a bit of a composite shot you'd see from an older movie, but even still, that isn't the end of the world. And it does feel like in certain regards, this series is almost trying to evoke the look of a movie from a different era. I'm not going to go out my way and say, oh, it looks like something from the 80s, or it looks like something from the 90s, the 2000s, or whatever. There is something about it which it feels oddly nostalgic in a way that I just can't put my finger on, at least for the time being at least. And I will just say that a major reason as to why I think the CG works here, whereas it doesn't work in other similar series, is the fact that it wasn't the focus of the action, it was just the backdrop. You have that moment, I think it was with Popstep chasing after somebody, and the camera just kind of pans around them in a way which you can't really do in animation without spending a long time working on it. So, yeah, it works here. It really does work, and I give them thumbs up for being able to make it work in such a brilliant way. Moving away from the animation, I will just say that the tone throughout this episode does feel very consistent. Not just in relation to its source material, or the main series, but also within itself. Whilst the first half of the episode does feel darker and a lot more dramatic, that darkness and that drama does not override the lighter stuff that comes later on, and vice versa. The sillier, goofier stuff we get in the latter half of the episode doesn't feel as though it's taking away from the drama in the first half of it. I will be honest, I don't think these two episodes should have been combined into one, but the way that they do handle it and the way that it is all paced together, it isn't too jarring. I have other things I want to say about it going forward, but at least within the here and now, I do like what we're doing here, and a lot of this is helped by the action and the character designs that we get in this episode, as this is the episode where we get our big official debut of the fake X-Men characters. And I will just say, I love the Japanese voice for the fake Wolverine. It really does sound like some teenager trying to be gruff, tough and hard. It really does work for that character, and I'm really looking forward to seeing more of them. I will admit that when I first introduced with the manga, I wasn't too keen on them, but hey, I've really come around to them, and I want to see more what they've been doing them going forward. But also, with all this said, whilst it is totally consistent, it does also have the fact that you can have, like I say, those silly moments in a later part of the episode, as well as the more serious stuff in the early parts of it. You know, you can have silly fake Wolverine and silly fake Cyclops, whoever his name is, but you can also have the big dramatic reveal that Knuckle Duster doesn't have a quirk, and that reveal feeling consistent not just with the tone of the scene, but also with the tone of Eraserhead. It's not done in an overly dramatic way that is no, wait, it can't be! He has no quirk, dun dun dun, as you probably would have got in a different series. Here it just feels like it is very keeping with Erizawa and how he is as a person. There's an argument to be made that he might be a tad too understated, given just how consequential this reveal is, more broadly for the series, but the counter-argument can just be that, Eraserhead isn't really bothered by that because he has no reason to be bothered by that. Whereas for us as an audience, yeah, it's a little bit more of a thing for us to be bothered about, but hey, we'll discuss that in greater detail as these things go forward. But one of the things I will just say is that and some people might get upset when I say this, but I do enjoy how crappy Crawler's power is. To be fair, he uses it very well, but this isn't a superpower. This isn't the kind of thing that you see in the main series. At the end of the day, as they underlined in the previous episode, this is a power that he just allows him to move slightly faster than a bicycle, and that's just about it. And the fact it is so crappy is what makes it so interesting when it's used in action sequences, as he has to figure out ways to get the best of it and to make the most of it. And that is something I do appreciate, as it means the action sequences themselves have a little bit more going on to, beyond just, okay, this character can shoot lasers out of their eyes, so do that thing, I suppose. Or, oh, they can't do it this many times, so they've got to find a way around it, but it's already a superpowered ability anyway. It's just a thing that makes his life kind of a little bit easier in some regards, but it's how he uses it in this context which makes him a more of an interesting superhero versus some similar other ones that have been in fiction more recently. And it does end up making this feel more grounded. It makes him feel more like just a normal person. He is not the character with the legendary superpower that's been passed on for generation after generation. He's not the chosen one. He's just a guy. And a guy that has to work within the best of his abilities and the best of his budget. As we see when we have the moment where we get Knuckle Duster suggesting to him to use motorcycle gear to help protect him sliding around. That moment, I think, slightly longer in the manga, but not by much. But hey, I do love these scenes. I do love these moments. I do love the finding everyday and cheap solutions to hero problems. Crawler doesn't have UA behind him. He doesn't have this massive budget. He just has to figure it out with whichever stuff that he has around him, which I do like. I also like the big battle with the Salaryman. I know that I'm going back a little bit here, but whilst I will just say that in the manga he's the one that gives the Spike villain and them lot the trigger, here it's changed. I'll discuss my greater feelings with that later on, but I am happy that the thrust of that fight and his significance to everything was still maintained, even if the series of events was changed. And I do like how this and the stuff with Knuckle Duster's quirk and the other bits and pieces that we get in this episode is setting stuff up for later on, and it's doing it in a way that doesn't feel too deliberate. It doesn't feel too much like, this is the important story point, make mental note of it because it will come up later, as you can get with the series, and to a certain degree you got with the main series. For the here and now, it does feel as though we are just getting this smattering of information. Some of it is world building, some of it is setting up for later plot points, but it's for us, the audience, to discover which one is going to be the thing we're going to be talking about for the next few weeks and months, and which ones are just neat things for the here and now, and we'll see how that ends up resolving going forward. The big fact that these 2 episodes are effectively one action sequence, and then a goofball episode, does mean I can't talk too much from the story elements themselves, and because of how early we are, you get the reason why these reviews at the moment are rather short. But with that said, let's get into the negatives. And look, I'll just say that even beyond my knowledge of the manga, this episode has a very odd emotional arc to it. This episode is... the moment where Crawler saves Popstep in this episode is the equivalent of the moment in the main series where Midoriya has the "you can be a hero" thing with All Might. This is a major moment within his life. When he saves Popstep, this is the moment where he goes from being just some guy that helps in his neighborhood to beginning his journey as a vigilante. His journey into being a genuinely helpful individual who can save the day and save the people around him. This is a major moment in his life, and yet this moment is just the midway point of an episode. Regardless of knowledge from the manga, it feels very odd to me that this major emotional, character-defining moment is the midway point of an episode, not the big emotional climax at the end of it, or towards the end of it. It feels strange to me that this is the case and it would go down this path. Like I say, this episode does not screw the pooch when it comes to the tone. We don't have this situation where, oh, the first half is big and dramatic and then the second half is so goofy that it undermines what came before it. No, thankfully not. but it feels strange to me you have something that is this significant to this character and their life, that it happens midway through the episode and not at the end of it. I feel that it should have come towards the end of it, because otherwise what do we have? We have this big major moment in this character's life midway through the episode, and the thing that wraps the episode up is a gag about people getting Crawler's hero name or his vigilante name wrong. Like, I understand, you know, where all that's going, but at the same time, it does feel bloody odd to me that something so significant to a character's development would be kind of stopped midway through the episode, and then the thing that ends the episode is a bit of a gag. I mean, it's not the worst way to do it, but at the same time, I think it could have been done better. Yes, to actually make it the end point of the episode, or the big thing towards the end of the episode, would have meant some filler being needed, which wouldn't necessarily be the worst thing in the world. I do get this feeling that they are genuinely trying to do the first 4 volumes in this 13 episode run, which I ain't sure about it, boss. I'm really not. And with situations like this, it means that certain episodes are going to have a very weird tilt towards them. Again, it's not to the point where it feels as though it's tonally inconsistent and that one side undermines the other, but I think that the moment of Crawler saving Popstep and all that stuff should have been the climax of this episode, and not just the shenanigans regarding fake Wolverine and fake Cyclops and Knuckleduster punching a guy really hard in the face. To be fair, the episode tries to have a more of a dramatic end to it, where we got the detective having his moment, but then it's undermined by having the, oh no, they've got Crawler's name wrong, which is a fun ending gag, but given the quality of what came before it, it feels like an odd way to end the episode. With that said, however, let us get into the overview, and I think that this episode is fun. I think it is enjoyable. I don't think it quite hits the grade as far as a big, powerful, emotional moment, and I don't like the fact these 2 episodes are combined in the way that they are, but as is the case of the changes that we've had thus far from the anime to the manga, I understand why those changes have been made. Like, for the record, I get it. And I think that at the end of the day, this is going to be a different strokes for different folks thing. And to quote Mystery Science Theater 3000, I should really just relax and not worry about it. And I'm going to try and do that, but it's hard to really do that when this material is just so fresh in your mind. And to be fair, with everything we've had thus far, it's not bad. It's not poorly adapted. It's just presented in a way that works, but at the same time, I think it could have been done better. With that said, let us go into Comment Corner! It's time for Comment Corner. Got a fistful of comments this week. Here we go. So we kick off with Sergeant Gullery, who I know by a different name, who says, good video, man, and congrats on 150 subs. We aren't quite there yet. And to be fair, he keeps making this post every few weeks or so when it looks like we're about to break it, but we're not quite there yet. As of the time this video is recorded, we're about 149. Would be nice to break 150 over the next couple of weeks or so, but hey, I mean, no rush to do that, even though it would be rather nice to do so. Maybe by the end of the year, you never know. Next comment comes from Big X1, who says, I'd forgot this was out today until I saw the review. I thought it was going to be on Saturday. I loved it. The changes feel strange though, but it's good. Thank you for your comment, and I just think that for anyone who's read the manga to any degree, this is going to feel, there's going to be a bit of uncanniness to it. Like, thus far, they haven't cut anything, they've just changed the sequence of events here and there. For reasons which I do appreciate, and I do think it's good, and I do like the things that they have changed to a certain degree. It's just that it's going to be one of those uncanny valley things, almost like it's a case of, I remember this being differently. It's no Mandela effect, I think it's more the kind of thing we want to reference here. But in any case, thank you for your comment. Next comment comes from Scott TV Gamer, who says, I've only been spoiled on some stuff, and I'm reading the manga alongside the anime, but I think at least some of the changes are either good, like foreshadowing a certain character, or have some merit to them, like making Izuku's mom thinner to sell the idea that they set before the main series. Similarly to the latter point, the episode probably ended with Awazawa to make it clear that characters from the main series will be prevalent in this. I get wanting to account for viewers who haven't seen My Hero Academia, but it'd be a missed opportunity to not draw in as much as the already large fan base as early on as possible. Thank you for your comment, and that is something I do mention in the previous review, and I do get it again, and this is something I mentioned in the comment to them, that I do get the changes that have been made to it, and I think that a lot of my issues with it are more the case of that I'm seeing this for I'm seeing this after having read the manga so recently, and I think if I came back to this without having to need to do a review and watching it a second time, it wouldn't be as much of a problem for me. Not that it is a problem, but it is, like I say, the almost uncanny valley, almost Mandela effect kind of things of, hang on a minute, this isn't how it went. Wait, hang on, no. But in any case, I really do enjoy it. Thank you for your comment. And our next comment comes from Jack Orlantunen, who says, I heard that the first season is going to be 26 episodes and it's going to split into 2 cores, with the season finale taking place at the end of the Sky Egg arc. Thank you for your comment, and I don't think that is the case. From what I've heard, it's been commissioned for about 13 episodes, which, if my theory about them needing to be 25 episodes of My Hero Academia a year are true, then that would mean the next series for My Hero Academia itself is going to be about 12 episodes, but hey, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. But it would be weird to have a second series done later this year, or after break that's another 13 episodes, bearing in mind there's been no comment on that thus far. And it'd be especially weird because it means that we'd be effectively like halfway through the series after only 1 year, which this series, it's not that long. I think it's only about 14, 15 volumes or so. So that would constitute the first 7, 8 volumes. But anyways, we'll see where we end up going with it. Thank you for your comment, and if you have anything to say about this particular episode of My Hero Academia Vigilantes or the main series more gently, let me know in the comment section down below, and you will be read out in a future video. Thank you all for listening, thank you all for watching, and see you next time. Goodbye!
Thanks for watching. Be sure to like, favourite, subscribe, click the bell, and do all the YouTubey stuff that YouTube wants you to do. Go on, it'll do me a power of good. Until next time, my friends, goodbye!